Blessings, everybody. I pray that you all have had a good week. Today we're going to be talking about kingdom wives and how to win in your marriage. My husband just did a word on Rebecca, and it's a really good word. And if you missed that, I will link that video in the description box. If this is your first time here, my name is Patricia Lasky. Welcome. I'm glad to have you. And to everyone that is subscribed to this channel, as always, thank you so much for your support. I also want to thank those of you who have sown into our ministry. We are so grateful and we appreciate you. And I also want to thank those of you that have sent in gifts. We are grateful and we are thankful for you as well. How do you see your married life? When you imagine it, what do you see? Some of us see the wedding. Some of us imagine the honeymoon. Some of us children. Some of us a house. But oftentimes what we don't see is the union, the oneness. What does it mean? What does it look like? What does me and him represent? What do we look like together? What do we look like in God's eyes? And do our thoughts line up with God's thoughts? When God looks at the union, he sees oneness, he sees power, he sees purpose, he sees provision and blessings. And he also sees the unity of the marriage, which equals authority. So what happens a lot of times when you only look at certain aspects of your marriage is that people get caught off guard because they see the marriage in their minds, but once they get married, they have no vision or no concept of what it's supposed to look like. So what happens is people end up going into their default mode. This is just who I am. That's just who you are. And it's because they have only looked at certain things and they don't know what they're supposed to look like together or what they're supposed to be doing together. So they end up not knowing what it's supposed to look like. So today I'm going to be talking about the kingdom wife, because if you don't know what that looks like, that's when conflict starts brewing between you and your spouse, because you haven't considered what that means and what it looks like for both of you as a whole. And then that's when the blame game starts. It's your fault. No, it's your fault. Or this is what I think. No, this is what I think. And that's when you end up falling apart because your vision isn't the same. But when you both know what it's supposed to look like, then it gives you a vision to walk towards each other and to understand when you're out of bounds. It's hard to know when you're out of bounds when all you know is what you look like by yourself, or you end up knowing what you want your husband to do versus what do we look like together? What are we doing together? What should we be doing together? And when you don't know when you're out of bounds, that brings strife, it brings division, it brings frustration, and it damages the intimacy between both of you. So the question is, are you willing to do it God's way? A lot of people want to get married. A lot of people are excited about this marriage season, but they actually want to do it their own way. A kingdom marriage only works one way, and that's God's way. And that is the key to having a successful marriage. A trick of the enemy is to make you think that doing it your own way is okay and that you'll be successful in it. And what he does is he comes in and he flips the roles. If he can flip those roles, then he's already in your home. He's already in your marriage. And so the key to it, the success of a marriage, comes from doing it God's way. What does a kingdom wife look like? You can find kingdom wives all throughout the Bible. Esther, Ruth, Abigail, but a perfect example of a kingdom wife is the Proverbs 31 woman. She loved her husband and she loved her children. Everything she did was for her family, whether it was her work in the home or her work outside of the home. It was for her family. She wasn't constantly thinking about herself. Your marriage is not about you, and you have to consider others better than yourself. She also respected her husband. And how do we know that? Because it says that her husband was known amongst the elders in the gates. And so he was known, meaning that he was respected. He was a king amongst other kings. And so it was because of the type of man that he was, but it was also because of the respect that was given to him by his wife. And this is not about you being perfect. I'm not perfect and you are not perfect. And the man that the Lord is bringing you to is not perfect. He has to grow into his call as a husband, just as you have to grow into your call as a wife. It isn't about perfection, but what the Lord is doing is establishing your heart posture. And so the Lord is always looking at the heart. And so if you have it in your heart that you want to do things God's way, He will be there to help you every step of the way. His grace is always there for you. So let's talk about submission. Now, submission is a word that is despised by a lot of people, and that's because of the way that they've thought about it and what they've heard from different people. They think that they are being diminished. They think that they're going to be someone's doormat, but that's not the case at all. Submission is not a diminishing of you. What it is actually a protection for you, and it's also a protection for your marriage. When you submit under your husband's headship, you are protected in the spirit realm as well as in the natural, and it also keeps out strife. The Bible says, where there is envy and strife, there is the devil and every evil work. And the Lord created this order for a reason. When you don't have order, you open the door to chaos. The Lord created submission to keep a guard around the house. Okay, submission is not a punishment. It's actually a battle strategy. What it's saying in the spirit realm is that you give God rule and you move yourself out of the way. And when you submit to your husband, you are giving God full reign over your marriage and over your life. And so by playing your part, the Lord will come in and address whatever is failing. If there's any part of your marriage that isn't flowing the way that it should, the Lord will then come in and move on your behalf. Submission is actually a wonderful thing. It isn't about suppressing you or diminishing you, but it's a requirement. And it's a requirement for unity, for vision, for direction, for blessings, and for communication. If you can't communicate, you can't build. And that is why the enemy is constantly coming in, trying to hinder you from being able to communicate. But as I said, submission is a requirement for good communication. So it's important that you begin to understand some of these things before you get married. Even for those of you who are already married, if your marriage isn't functioning the way that it should, then these are some good principles for you to look at and see where it is that it's off. Submission is an act of trust. In Ephesians 5, it says, "Wives, submit unto your husband as unto the Lord." When you submit unto the Lord, you are saying that you trust him. Regardless of how you feel or what you think, you're saying, I'm going to do it because I know that you have my best interest at heart. Your husband cannot ask you to do something that is outside of what God has said. And so you don't have to be afraid, because the Lord is his head and he's always watching, and he will step in on your behalf. But if he is telling you something for your own good, why would you not want to listen to that? When you are by yourself, the Lord performs the role of a husband to you. He protects you, he provides for you, he counsels you, he leads you. But when he brings you to a husband, that mantle is then given to your husband. So it's important that you don't make it hard for him to do what the Lord is putting on his heart to do. Let's look at Hebrews 13:17. Obey them that have the rule over you, and submit yourselves, for they watch for your soul, as they that must give account, that they may do it with joy and not with grief, for that is unprofitable for you. The word rule here means to lead, and you don't want to make it hard for your husband to lead, because he is the watcher of your soul, and when you make it hard for him, it becomes of no benefit to you. You will be surprised at how many people don't understand this dynamic, and as a result, many women become frustrated with their relationship with God, and definitely with their relationship with their husband, thinking that something has gone wrong. But what they don't understand is that the order has changed. The order is different now. When the Lord hands the mantle to your husband, the order changes, and it causes frustration, because a lot of people are left wondering, why isn't God talking to me as much as he did? But it's because the order is different. And I'm not going to talk too much about this now, because I'm actually going to do a teaching on it. So the question for you now is, are you willing to do it God's way? Because a kingdom marriage can only work one way, and that's God's way. So in order to be successful, you have to do it God's way. So until next time, God bless you all. We love you all. Talk to you soon.